You're listening to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, the show that proves no one stumbles upon success ever. With your host, Lou Need. Every Mondays and Thursdays, we deliver cold hard evidence behind the power of a robust morning routine. Get ready to be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
I mean, there's a reason a certain energy has been cultivated.
Mm-hmm. And what was your stance?
Someone was talking about gentrifying and how, first they had a lot of stereotypes that lower income tenants are lower quality. And that's not the case. You can get a lot of applications, but who you let in your house is your decision. And if you let someone whose application shows they can't afford the rent, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Two, if you're having that much trouble in that neighborhood, you literally purchased in that neighborhood. As an investor, it's our job to know how to vet a neighborhood to make sure we're going to get the kind of rental tenants that we like. That, again, is your responsibility.
Right. And
you literally put the money down. Now, if you did it without knowing the neighborhood demographic and the rental projections and what kind of tenants that you can expect, you were a little headstrong and should have waited.
It's interesting because you go into investing in those areas because you are certain of what kind of people are going to be in that area, right? That's the first inkling.
Yes.
You decide, you know what you're getting into. You actually signed up because you know what you're getting into, because
exactly.
You're looking for, you need that reoccurring cash flow. So you go into an area where there is Section 8. So you know that rent will be paid. So if you have to deal with the other things that are not so pleasing, then you know that's the cost of doing business.
We could all sell our properties for 3 times what we paid for it, because gentrification happens first in minority neighborhoods. White flight causes a depression of prices, right? And then people move in who can actually afford those downtown places that are really cheap because of that flight. And then they start coming in, and it was his comments of, now I can sell it 3 times. And I made it very clear that a lot of us can resell, but I'm not for gentrification. I don't raise my rents because of macro forces around me if I have a good quality long-term tenant in this affordable area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I am profitable, but I also care about the community and giving affordable housing options, because if we don't care, if we choose money over people, we aren't stopping the cycle. And I've made that very clear. It's not that nuanced of a position.
Because you have to stay true to your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your purpose, Lisa. I know we just got on the show and we started talking about this. And I've gotten a very good idea of why you started this, where your heart is. And because you really do care about the community, you really care about people. And your niche is working with Black professionals in attaining rental properties and getting cash flow. So tell us about your purpose.
In minority neighborhoods is what it turns out to usually be. So when I first started doing this, I was just like, hey, a lot of people ignore racial elements, or they don't want to talk about white flight and steering. But the reason these places are at the lower price range is because of white flight. Racism was part of it. One person moved into that downtown house, a whole bunch of Caucasian people left. It's literally a thing called white flight. And that does shape what has happened. Those stereotypes, the lack of wanting to integrate, all of that. That is why those houses are depressed. And sometimes you get people with stereotypes who think, well, maybe Black people or minorities just don't know how to keep a place up. We're fine, okay? We are fine. But, when a lot of the wealth leaves the area and a house that, you know what I mean? There are ramifications for that. And so it turned out when I was talking about low-income houses, it was generally in a minority neighborhood, but not all the time. So it depends on what part of the country you're in. Some places it's just low income. There's no Black people in that city. So, you know what I mean? It's just is what it is. But many of the times it was minority neighborhoods. And when I started talking about this investment strategy, the people who are really picking up what I was saying were Black professionals, people who may have came from that background, got money because of climbing the socioeconomic ladder of success, usually through, having a stable job for years, or even through education and getting a higher paying job. They were the ones picking it up. The people I received the most blowback straight down the board were white. Now, other minorities were okay with what I was saying and picking up what I was throwing, but blowback consistently came from one constituency, mostly white males who were affluent and just did not know how to navigate this market, quite truthfully. So it was just very clear. If you look back, you go to Bigger Pockets, which is a great big real estate forum, you see all the people talking for are of one ethnicity and the people talking against are another. And so the thing is, I'm just comfortable saying, hey, let's point this out about who really can't understand it and who's being profitable. And then we're the Black professionals, the Hispanic professionals, white women, the people who were not in that group who were against it were doing just fine in a lot of ways. And that needs to be spoken about. Why are we doing so great, but you guys cannot get it in your mind that this can be profitable? So because of that, so it was just really obvious that like there was a huge disconnect between those who wouldn't give this a chance and those who would. And when those people did give it a chance, it was to push people out or gentrify, not to offer affordable housing. So I really do structure my group and goal out of, hey, we're very profitable, but let's learn how to do this in a way and understand that this is, if you're going to neighborhoods that are the most affordable for people who are working class and lower income. So because of that, let's be mindful. This is some of the last places they can afford to rent. Wages are stagnating. Right? So people aren't making more money. So just because the rents come in because some yuppie with a white collar job can, because they want someplace cheap, it's be mindful that you're deliberately going into economically vulnerable areas. And you can raise your rents all that you want, of course, but you can also choose not to if you have a long-term tenant who takes care of your place, pays on time every month, and has a family there, right? So it's always your choice. And a lot of my investors talk about, look, I can raise my rents on every single one of my properties because the values have raised, but a lot of us don't because we have a good long-term tenant. It's affordable. They take care of the place, and it's a very symbiotic win-win situation. And we're not for gentrification, which is, all around me, I can raise my rents on all my properties $300 a month, but I don't. Because $300 to me it's money, don't get me wrong. But I got the house at such a low price that $300 is not going to make a difference in my life. I'm already profitable. But for them, it means the difference between leaving this affordable area or not. And I'm very open in talking about that and about what direction I choose and what I'm leading this group in. And so if you're just all about the profit, I understand that. But you don't need to join my group, which is an amazing group, as I cultivated it to be an amazing group, as the type of people I've wanted and solicited. But you just don't need to be in my group and bring that energy into it. You can make your own group, and that's okay. But mine shines because we have a bigger purpose and impact than just profit. And we can't complain about big businesses being so into profit at the expense of people and then do it at our micro level. Mm-hmm. It has to be the change you want to see.
And for you, Lisa, you have had reach and hit rock bottom. So you know what it's like to not be able to afford to live and not have a home and be on unemployment and trying to stretch a dollar. So you feel for the people that
I do in my heart. And I felt from before I experienced that. So when I experienced that, honestly, for some people, it might have been really traumatizing, but I grew up poor. So I was like, well, I guess I'm, shopping at Goodwill for all of my needs, like my silverware, pots and pans. So I was actually okay. Like I was happy and poor growing up. So when this happened and I was on unemployment and I had a foreclosure and I couldn't find a job, even though it was strained, that does not mean I was lower quality. It does not mean that I was unhappy. It just meant I made a lifestyle change to fit that situation. Do you know what I mean? Because people know how to live
within their means and under budget and still live a quality life.
Yeah, like in a place like New York City, it can be very extremely difficult, but not every place is extremely expensive like that or California. Other places, it's not maybe in the neighborhood you would have chosen, but it can be relatively comfortable. Mm-hmm. And then it depends on if you have kids or not. Are you by yourself? Are you a single mother or not? Because man, those daycare costs can eat it up. But so it was rock bottom, but it was also like, I've been here before. We'll be okay. We'll be fine.
the mindset that made the difference.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Because in 2009, you lost your job, you lost your home, right?
Yeah.
To foreclosure. You were left with a 35K condo, only just have enough money to renovate it, right? And half the work you did yourself. You like rolled up your sleeve and did all the work to stretch out your unemployment check.
Right.
And you were an electrical engineer with no job, and you were working on in your home. You clearly have seen the bottom. And because you had the mindset that you had is you're going to be okay, as you just says, that growth mindset led you to find new ways to cope with what your recent reality was. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about how you came upon the strategy of owning an expensive rental properties for cash flow.
Well, it sort of came about accident. And just point of note, like sometimes people think poverty has a certain connotation, but poverty's like, it can be fine. Honestly, some of the most caring people I've met, some of the best communities happen in the lower income communities because everyone knows each other and takes care of each other. Where I live now, people don't even come outside of their houses. I don't know their kids. So some people have all these stereotypes about what it is, but it's like I was truly loved, supported in those communities, not by everyone, but if I was young and I was outside, someone would take care of it. So I just always want to point out, we have all these stereotypes, but to be quite honest, there's some things that sometimes is special growing up in low income. Not always. It can be tough. You're not going to get what you want. People don't have the money for things, and that's going to be a common reframe, but it doesn't have to necessarily be the saddest experience. So how did I get into 35,000 houses? I had just purchased, it was by accident because I didn't know they really existed, but I was in Ohio and I'd purchased that 35K condo right before I got laid off. And I was like, what? And it was so nice. It was like built in 2001. It was in such a nice part of town. I was like, this is $35,000? What? And I purchased it and I had gotten laid off a couple weeks later. But the thing is, at $35,000, the mortgage payment's like $350 a month.
Wow.
It's doable on unemployment. Do you know what I mean? By yourself. You know what I mean? You don't even need anyone or a roommate to move in. And so I'm definitely, so it was just like an awakening that, okay, just because I'm coming from Las Vegas or the West Coast doesn't mean everywhere is like the West Coast. And you really start understanding real estate specific. There are all different types of towns. So I took that mindset and I was like, okay, and this was really aggressive and I didn't end up doing it. But in my mind, I was like, okay, let me go ahead and every year I make $65,000 a year. Every year, let me save half of that and buy a new property. That's really aggressive. Okay. But I could do it, right? I can go to Goodwill and shop at the thrift store. Like, it doesn't bother me. So that was the mindset I was in at that time. So when I found another job out in DC and moved there, I rented the property I was staying in out. And I was like, let me see if I can redo it. So the next year, I just spent the process of going, I know there's neighborhoods like this. Let me see if I can find it. And I just developed a system of like learning how to find these areas on the map and how to analyze the areas. Because so many people gave me pushback. So even in my heart, I knew it was okay and what kind of neighborhoods I was comfortable in because there was so much pushback from the quote unquote gurus in the community. I was like, well, let me ensure that I protect myself. And so I just built a lot of systematic analysis and metrics in the group. That's where my engineering comes into play because it can be easy for me to break things down at a base level and be very analytical about it. 6 years in engineering school will teach you that because everything is so complex. You have to break everything down to its bare minimum parts in order for our human brains to understand them. So I just did the same thing and it worked. It took a long time on my first one because at the time I was like, let me do all the work I did like I did on my condo. So it took me but I only had Saturdays to work. So it took like 3 months worth of Saturdays, right? But that took a year. If I added up, I think it was like 12, 13, 14 Saturdays that I spent. But, that takes time. That's like, it takes 10, 11 months if you're only doing it 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And there were two things that were, so one thing that was bad about it is that it took too long. The thing that was good about it is that I really understood everything at the base level, what I could do myself, what I could outsource. And I then use that knowledge to help others navigate. So there's always pros and cons on any experience. But I got that one ready. I had bought a house in Baltimore for $13,000 and then renting it out for $900, right? So it was very profitable. And like within a year I had paid within 2 years, I paid off what I purchased it for and any money I spent on renovating it. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, let me do this again. But Baltimore is a very interesting place. Let me do it down in Virginia. And then I found a market in Virginia to do it in. And so, and it went smooth at that time because I had 2 houses behind me now. I knew what to outsource and to pay for immediately and what I can do on my own. Although I will admit I was so exhausted from that house in Baltimore after a year, I basically paid everyone to do everything on the next home. It was like easier for me to come up with more money than try to save money and get it rented out cheaper. And so it was up and running. And then at that point, it was only 3 properties at the time. But I was like, you know what? They're talking about this property, but I know there's people who are like me, who came from low income backgrounds, who may have left, but honestly, like we understand these neighborhoods and this is actually affordable. A $35,000 mortgage, you need $6,007 down. And a lot of professionals out there have that money for investments. Do you know what I mean? Some people don't, but a lot of people do. And honestly, not just Black professionals, a lot of people who are working class who have that sort of money. I work with people who aren't necessarily professional, but they have $50,000 in their bank account because they're savers, right? They work 2 jobs. So it's not necessarily about your title. I just found that was the majority of people. So went with that. But yeah, who can afford that? And I was like, let me take this to YouTube. If no one listens to me, I did my part for those who want the information. That was my thought. If no one listens to a word I said, I did my part. Because I was going to go to the local library, but I was like, that's too small. So I just started doing YouTube. And I swear it was just 3 people at a time would listen to my videos. And I was putting them out every day because I had so much experience. I had so much of methodology. And so I was just putting them out, right?
Yeah.
Like video after video. And I was interviewing people. And, what started as, 3 people watching it turned into 5, would turn into 7. Every time I produced a video would turn into 12. It was just so interesting watching the progression. And it was when I was getting 15 people who would watch my stuff anytime I put it out to 30. That's when I was like, oh, okay, so I do have an audience. And it's funny now because now it's like 5 years later and it's really grown. And we've been very successful despite people saying you couldn't do it, right? Like in your faces, we're doing really well. And it's just funny when you see how big it is. And it's like, oh, where were y'all 5 years ago? No matter, you're here now. But the word is getting out and people are doing it. And so honestly, that's the main part because you can only make so much change yourself. But if other people hear your idea, hear your methods, you teach them in a way that they can do it and go out and they're successful, that's when you build an army of people who, and what I want to do is really start changing the conversation about real estate investing, about not overlooking these people, this demographic, not ignoring the racism or institutionalized nature of racism that went into play on why these houses are inexpensive, but also going, hey, I understand these are affordable houses, and I will do my part to combat that since local governments don't seem to be able to do it. I, at the investor level, will be mindful that I'm going into vulnerable neighborhoods and mindful that I will give them a place to stay and really consider if I'll gentrify with the rents or by selling it. At the end of the day, you can do what you want, but I'm very clear that I'm in here to make a difference and not displace people in already vulnerable neighborhoods. So that's sort of where the idea and sort of the evolution came about.
How did your YouTube, how fast did it grow? I know you have 9,000 people in your group, Facebook group now. What about your YouTube following?
It's 19,000, but that's only part of it. I released a book about 2 years ago, Investing in Rental Properties for Beginners, and it really lays this down in a way that it's easy to read, and that brings in a new audience of people too. And I'm very clear in my rhetoric about what type of impact I'm here to make. So it's great because I tend to draw people who understand that and go, you know what? I do like the idea of not only just making rent, but providing good housing to people in the lower incomes, right? Because if it's not us, it's them. So growth comes from the different places. But
it comes from a place of serving others too. You really do care about the community in that way. So tell us a little bit about your method, your strategy, your analysis that you initially did. And out of that, I believe your platform, Affordable Real Estate Investment, was born.
Yeah. So methodology is, if you get the book, I'll go into detail on it. But it's like the main issues people had with this price range was that too much crime, headachy tenants, and mostly just that, what kind of tenants you'd get and too much crime. And so part of my metrics is looking like, how do you get the crime information? When you get the crime information, how do you read the crime information? Are all crimes the same? They're not. Right. So part of the methodology is getting a good handle on reading the statistics, because if that's your biggest fear and the actual data shows there's no crime, then what are we talking about? Right. Because some you look up and they have just like, oh, my God, there's like there's like, gunshots and assaults on this block. Another block, there's absolutely nothing. So there you go. That's one myth or stereotype that is completely debunked. And let's look at other parameters around this house. What is the cost? What are projected rents? Okay, because I am a real estate investor. Don't get me wrong. Am I going to get a return on investment? And there's more. We definitely go into the book on this and in my training, but it's basically I took the top two and go, well, how do you vet tenants in this neighborhood? Vetting a tenant in this neighborhood is different than an A-class neighborhood. They're going to have different amounts of money. They're going to have maybe a slightly different looking credit report because, where money's tight, you're going to see more blemishes. The money isn't tight. But how do you read that credit report? And some of it just comes from experience of me doing it, but also my experience of knowing, my family are the people I rent to, right? So like, I know my family, I know my cousins, like I know what goes on, but like who can be a good tenant or not, who can pay the rent every month, regardless, and how to read that credit, that application report to pick that out. So it just really goes into the biggest fears people have and like taking them one by one, going, this is how you circumnavigate it.
Well, what are the different ways you can purchase some properties?
Yeah. So the first thing is, where are you located, and are there lower priced properties in where you live? Okay. So I actually work with a lot more people who are from New York, DC, Atlanta, Georgia, California, parts of Texas, where they have money saved up for like a down payment and to get a property for cash flow, but not where they live. So I work with a lot of people who have to invest out of state. When I work with my people in Ohio and Indiana, they usually have something they can drive to that they can invest in that makes sense and will be profitable for them. So first it's deciding, where do you live? What market are you in? And where these houses are in conjunction to where you live. Now, a lot of my clients invest long distance. Long distance can be 2 hours away. It can be out of state. And so we just systematically go through a process of going, wherever you are, what is the nearest likely location you should be investing in, and me teaching them how to analyze those markets in that skill set.
Yeah, because you hear a lot about staying local, looking in your area. So how do you, how is investing long distance easier?
All right. So that staying local is like just horrible advice. Like a lot of the advice people don't, it really is, it's trash. It just, because local can mean $500,000 to invest. You have the down payment for a $500,000 house? Because I don't have 20% down for that. Right. And so many people, before they heard about my methods, if you're being told that's good advice, it really isn't. It's actually the worst advice. I understand where it comes from, but the reality is that really doesn't serve the people who actually have money to invest. So it is easier because I tend to think, because when you're local, I think you just purchase. When you invest long distance, you have to actually analyze the market. So I actually feel that more due diligence goes into it. So when I work with clients, you can look up for appreciation. You can look up for growth. You can look to see if they have the right infrastructure or team that you can tap into to purchase. And so because it is further away and you have to look at different metrics, I actually find that you do more due diligence investing long distance, at least if you do it with me, right? Because this is sort of, what I teach people how to do in my training courses and in my book. So it's something that you can actually look for all those things. So when I have clients, we usually have 2, 3, 4, 5 possible cities they can drive or fly to. And we start looking at the individual metrics of, okay, this one has a lot of growth, but higher price houses. This one has lower price houses, but no growth, but it's steady. And this is, this one has all of that, but it's you have to fly to it, not drive. And so once we have all of those different cities in front of us and all those metrics gathered, the numbers, I love saying the numbers will really tell you where you should be investing. It'll be, once I get people to go through this process, it's very clear. They're like, oh, I guess I'm staying here in X because of all these different factors. So it's all about the analysis and analyzing the right data, not just any data. Some people, if you go to like the major sites, they're like, oh, vacancy rates. Well, it's like, how do you know how vacant a place is? Those are just sort of estimated factors. But what you can see is how many people are moving into the area every year. Now, that's a real hard data set point that you can use in your analysis to show the growth.
It's asking the right questions because, as you say, it's not just looking at any data. As a data analysis myself, it's how can the data give you informative information, insight that can help you make better decisions.
Right. It's not all data you need to be spending your time on. And so when they come to me, a lot of it's just breaking down a lot of cookie cutter mainstream advice that it's just someone repeated it, but it makes no sense. Honestly, it makes okay, so I live in New York City. What's local? You mean I need to invest $800,000? No, that makes no sense. That doesn't. No, you don't need to invest on an $800,000 property if you've never invested before. You should definitely start small. So it's all about just sort of breaking it down to its base layers and really getting the right metrics. And so I find that by the time you go through this process, you're comfortable investing long distance because you did it with foresight and knowledge. You knew what to expect on the major items. And those major items came from my experience on hand and my experience for the last 7 years, helping people invest long distance. So those are the 2 areas of my experience. 1, I help people do this every day. 2, I've done it myself. And between all of those, over the years, you just get more refined and you get better, especially if you do it every day and it's part of like another skill set that you've developed. And so between all that, they're usually very comfortable. They're like, I know how much it costs to get there. I know why I chose it. I know what to expect. I know what kind of houses, what kind of people are on the ground. So by the time you know all that information, investing long distance isn't that hard. And 2, I like to say, you think the CEO of IBM is on the ground at every IBM location? No, they're not. But what they do is they have a really good system of team and people who are on the ground analyzing the market from a micro and macro level before they even go. So you don't always have to be in someone's face to have a business run well, right? I have so many, you can see that with so many remote workers. You don't need to be in the office with me for you to do a great job. Like, that's not necessary. These are the parameters. Does this deliver on the parameters? You did. We'll keep working together. So it's really like taking a lot of the old school thinking and throwing it away and just starting fresh. And there's so much we can leverage online to get the information for free that people just weren't looking at it in this way because they were just trying to live with the old methods and try to make it work to them. Whereas I'm more of, this is like the new world we live in. So let's live in this new world with the new tools that we have.
Yeah, property management. I mean, there's so many of them. There's people who are just waiting and willing to take on the task for you. So you don't need to be on site.
That's yes, ma'am. And your job is to pick a good property management team. So we take that into account before have you plunk your money down anywhere.
What happens when you can't qualify for a traditional mortgage, right? So we're talking about 2 sets of people. We're talking about, there's racism against a community, but also if you try to go for, as a first-time home buyer, you might hit some hiccups. What happens? What do you do if you can't qualify for a traditional mortgage and you want to get into this space?
There's some banks that even if you're a Black person, you have the same exact credit profile as a white person, same exact credit file. I mean, you still won't get it as a Black person. And it's something we need to talk about. There's a wealth gap, but it's been very strategically placed upon us. So, and you can look that research up. There's some things like I was just looking at a Santander. They get all sorts of application, but 90+% of all their applications and approvals go to white couples or white individuals. And they've been called out on it, right? So it's not even like they haven't been called out on it, or they haven't been fined, or they haven't had a lawsuit settlement, right? So this is proven. So some of us won't get a mortgage. There are other methods because this price range is lower. Sometimes a cash option is available. In some parts of this country, you can buy one of these houses, $16,000 cash, and not have to do too much work. And so it's a choice. Do you use all of your cash for that? Do you get a personal loan to purchase it? You can get a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 loan. A personal loan from the banks and credit unions, anywhere from 7% to 14% interest rate. And if sometimes if you look at the numbers and how much you would be paying that loan back and how much you'd get in rent, it completely makes sense for 5 years for you to do it. Now there's strategies on top of that, but I'm just keeping it for this, just general. And there's more strategies if you do go that route, how to sort of maximize that with the cash you have in hand. So it's definitely something that's just a little bit more accessible to more people. Now, if you don't have any money, you might want to look into house hacking, meaning you have $5,000, $6,000. And the question is, can you do that? And house hacking is a term meaning you move into a property for the minimum year that, or whatever that's necessary according to your loan terms, because if it's primary or owner occupied, you have a lower down payment requirement, right? And there's more resources to help you. For instance, FHA, 3.5% down. And so they're saying, hey, why don't you find a house that you can do that to in one of these neighborhoods where you're still comfortable, and you can go about your business in that way. Buy the house, make sure, buy it like it's an investment, even though you live in it for a year. And then after a year, go on to the next house or rent it out.
So these are considered Class C, Class D properties. So it adds up, right? At the end of all the renovation, infrastructure, building infrastructure to bring them up to date, it costs you a big chunk of money at the end of all that.
It depends on what market you're in. I've invested pretty much in, just about every market between me and my clients, or helping my clients, or analyzing with my clients. So the reality is that I like to tell people from the beginning, if you're investing in the Northeast, the Baltimore, Philadelphia's, you know what I mean, of the world, you're going to find that you can get the low price and higher rents because it's just a low urban area. It's a highly populated area. Rents are just higher, right? And more compact spaces. But if you're in the Midwest, rents are not as high as they are in the Northeast, in the more urban and compact areas or more populous areas. And the houses are still relatively inexpensive. So expect a little less cash flow than you would in the Northeast. And then if you get to the South, you can expect a little less cash flow in the South than in the Northeast, because you can find a $25,000 house in the South that doesn't need work, but the rents are like $500 a month instead of $800 a month. And then it's a question is it profitable with the expenses you need to make on it and the repairs you need to do and the ongoing maintenance expenses to keep that $500 house, even though it's cheaper, it doesn't need much work. So that's why I like to say everything's nuanced. There's no one size fits all, because for each of these individuals, you might choose the Northeast, or you might choose the Midwest, or you might choose that Southern home because you live there, it's close by, and you can pay for it cash. So it doesn't cash flow much, but you're able to make it work for you, for what your comfort level is. And so it's very much, real estate investing should be very much scalable, and it should scale up and down according to what you want. I find a lot of advice out there is maybe from people who aren't helping people do this every day. So it's just trite. It's just advice, but it's not worth much. But if you do this every day, It's like, look, this is what we can look into and what you can expect. And then you can just make better choices and maybe get something further away because you're really into cash flow and you don't mind urban neighborhoods. Whereas someone else is like, actually, I'm not comfortable in minority neighborhoods and I just like these type of neighborhoods and I might pay more. But I grew up in a Polish working class neighborhood. That's what I'm comfortable investing in here in Pennsylvania, right? So I pay more money, but that's what I'm actually more comfortable in. To me, I'd rather you just be comfortable and be in a neighborhood that you actually want to be in than uncomfortable and have trickle down effects of that. Because people can read your energy, if not your heart. You know what I mean? Like people can read if you're uncomfortable or not. And if you aren't uncomfortable, then maybe you should look at another neighborhood. I know everybody's eyeballs get big looking at $30,000 to $50,000 properties because that is inexpensive. But I always tell, don't let your eyeballs get you in trouble. You know, don't go for the lowest price if that's not what you're comfortable with, because it's not all about money. We're here to be profitable, but don't go to a neighborhood that you're deathly afraid of or feel you need a bulletproof vest in if that makes you uncomfortable just to get a lower price, because there's something called your peace of mind and stress. That has a price too. Let's take that into account.
Yeah. And I agree with you. It has to be about how comfortable you are in those areas, because you can go northeast, northwest and get something where it's populated, but you don't fit.
Right.
You don't fit there. And so you got to really think about your whole strategy and overall long-term goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I can go in a wide variety of neighborhoods. I am a people person. I mean that I'm not a people pleaser, clearly, from the beginning of our conversation. I'm a people person, meaning I can pretty much go in a lot of different areas and people look at me like I'm an odd duck, but I'm okay with that. I've been an odd duck my whole life, but I can really gel with a lot of different people at a lot of different income levels because I've had to circumnavigate a lot of different income levels. So I'm comfortable sort of switching up or down as I need to. And just being myself, and the way I approach people, be it you have a lot of money or not have a lot of money, is a way that's usually comfortable for them and for me. So I can go into neighborhoods that a lot of people might be nervous about. Anyways, I'm really spiritual. So when I walk in a neighborhood, I ask, my spirit guides, my angels, Jesus to protect me, to bless the place, to bless the people on the street. So I'm very spiritual with it. So I'm blessing people as I walk into the neighborhood with the spirit. So that plays a role in it too. You know what I mean? Calling in godlike energy. So I change the place just by walking into it. So I'll go into places people are scared of and just go, look, I got my God team on my side.
Yeah.
Good. But that's me. That's my level of emotional growth, spiritual growth, my anecdotal, my experiential growth. So I'm going to be more comfortable in more places than maybe someone else. And I'm just a different investor because I'm like, we can take that into account, right? Instead of you trying to just do a prescribed plan, like let's flex up and down with this according to who you are.
Right. For the properties, you mentioned that, people eyes get big when they see a property for $50K. Like these cheap properties, they're great, but what are we talking about for cash flow, right? These are these turnkey properties? Are they ready to go? Are they just their class?
Yeah, and those all depend on the market. So I'm going to go back to what I said before. In the Northeast, they may not be turnkey. You might have to put a little work into it, maybe not. Just depends on where you get it. The cash flow is going to be higher because the rents are higher. For that same 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 3-bedroom, 1-bath home, the rents might be 1,100, 1,000, 1,200. That same home in Indiana might be $800 or $900 in rents. And that same home in the South might be $700 in rents, right? So you can take the same home, you know what I mean? And in the Midwest, it may need a little work, but not as much as it might mean in the Northeast. And in the South, it might not need any work in that price range, but the rents are going to be lower. So it really is about what ultimate market we decide on. And when I work with my clients, we talk about that. Some people go, look, I'm going to Baltimore. They're like, I'm going to the Northeast then, because they're very much in an aggressive stage at that point, and they're okay with that. And other people, maybe they're a little older, they got kids, they don't need more stress, they got kids, right? I find my singles are aggressive. My family people are like, look, I just need easy. right now. And so maybe they take $250, $300 in cash flow. It's in the South, but it didn't need any work, right? And they didn't have to travel or get on a plane, right? Because I work with Southern clients. I work with clients all over the country, all over the world now, actually, since the launch of my book. But it really changes depending on where you're located and what kind of energy you have for travel and what kind of energy you have for being aggressive. And that really does change depending on how much stress you want to put in. But I mean, I don't, this is just the reality. I usually find that my singles, those without kids, are a lot more aggressive usually than the ones who do have kids in a family. Because I have a baby, that just drains you. I know ever since I've had my baby, I was like, I need easy. I don't need hard anymore. So I understand it. I get it. And I only have one kid. I talk to people with 4. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing?
It's a lot more risk with the kids involved, right? Because if you're single, you don't have to worry about but yourself and your savings and putting money away. But now you got to put money away for kids. You got to worry about rainy days, all that stuff. You got to be very conservative in your spending. So
I tend to find they're a little bit more like, I don't want to go into some really big thing. Or then I have people who are approaching retirement. That is, I just as many people like that, and their kids are out of the house, and so it's a toss up between them how aggressive they want to go to make this work. Right? Their kids are no longer concerned. They're in college. Half the time, their kids are doing this with them because they want them to. So I'll have a call, and they're like college age student is on the phone with their mom learning at the same time. Or father. And that comes into play as well. Just so it's singles, and it can be a single couple or a single individual. And then it's like families. And then it's like I had a family, but they're all grown now, and it's just me, and I'm heading into retirement. So the strategy really does sort of
work for everyone, because you work with a wide variety of people from different walks of life, different places. So with that in mind, what's the 2% rule used in rental properties?
Okay, so the 2% rule, it is a loose-based rule, but it's basically saying the ultimate goal is if you purchase a rental property that you make 2% of your total acquisition costs. So say you purchase and renovate a house and your all-in amount is $100,000 for the house. The 2% rule is that you'd want $2,000 a month in rent. That is the ultimate panacea. Like that is where everyone wants to be and what you're trying to do. So the reality is outside of my price range, you typically don't get that. In my price range, especially those who started with me in 2013, heard what I said. I mentored into we got a lot of 3% deals. So we bought a house for, $30,000 and we made $900, $1,000 a month in rent. So definitely in this price range, you have more ability to hit the 2% to 3% rules. Outside of my price range, it's not likely. Most people are at like 1%. So in the world, if you go out and look for information, they're like, most people, if they're not in my price range, are like, this rule sucks. Like, what are you talking about? There is no way if I pay, $100,000, $150,000 for a house and I make $1,000 in rent, I'm like at $50 in cash flow a month. I'm not, what I mean? Like, I'm not making 2% of what I bought. So it really is a panacea. Like, that really isn't doable outside of this niche, but within this niche, it definitely is. And that's what we shoot for. Of course, there's other factors. Maybe you take 1.5% because you like one neighborhood better than another that gets 3%, right? So I'm always going to tell people it always depends because it's not always about money when you invest, because sometimes you'll take less money.
This is all fascinating. It's stuff that, I have been pondering about, and to have you come on the show and talk about, like, there's a way to find and invest in rental properties that cost less than $50K. That's unheard of. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about affordable real estate investment, the platform that you do have that teaches others about this.
Yeah.
It's available to everyone. Tell us about your platform.
Yeah. So, affordable real estate investments, you can go to the website. A lot of people find me either through YouTube, they usually go, girl, I don't know what I was Googling, but you just showed up on my YouTube. I'm like, that was God.
Yeah.
That was God. Don't worry. Just let it flow. All the signs. So some people find me through YouTube, and I have a lot of my, I have like 56, I have a ton of videos up there, and it's so funny. People get so much from the free videos. I'm like, those are my free videos. Are you for real? And I'm like, you haven't even seen my training videos, but that's cool. So a lot of people find me there. There's a lot of information on the background, the strategy, mentality, going about doing it. It's overview. It's not as detailed as my training courses are, but it's a good start for you to find out, do I want to do this? Because if you ever set up for a strategy session call with me to go over, is this possible for you? I'd rather you watch all those videos in a lot of ways. So you know that this is a good fit for you, right? Because I really talk about everything. I talk about what these neighborhoods look like, feel like, what the demographic is, the racism that caused it, institutionalized, what you can do to combat it. I talk about a big overview of everything and what I'm trying to lead with. And then other people, if you want, some people are more into books. A lot of people are finding me through books. So you can go to Amazon and investing in rental properties for beginners. A lot of the details that are in my training is in the book because I wanted to make sure the book was substantial. So you can get a copy of the book. It's like $5 on Kindle, $15 for the paperback. Some people get the Kindle and then they get the paperback because they want a physical copy. But that's also a good way of doing it. And I'm working right now on editing the audiobook. So an audiobook version will be coming soon in the next couple weeks. As soon as my audio editor is done with the edits. We're like in the third round, I swear. I've listened to this audiobook like 4 times already, but we're going through the editing and I'm getting all the like little mistakes and whatnot. So that'll be launching. So either through my videos on YouTube, which are free, you can join my video YouTube channel for very, very low cost. It's like $2 a month where I do exclusive live streams and coaching sessions. And or you can get the book either free on Kindle or pay for the Kindle if you don't have Kindle Unlimited. So there's a lot of ways to get a lot of information for relatively low cost if you're interested. And then I always like to tell people, if you want my one-on-one advice, you can sign up for a strategy session. And, the initial one is at a, subsidized rate. And just to get a conversation going on what's possible, where I think you should be investing, how you should divide the bit of funds you have up, and sort of coming up with a plan on how this can be doable for you and what it might look like depending on where you're at in the country. So that is how you can find me. But on Amazon, investing in rental properties for beginners, I launched it about 2 years ago, and I'm happy to say it is on 3 bestsellers lists and has been since I launched. Women in Business, Real Estate Investments. It's number 4 today. I was really happy to see that. And also Buying and Selling Homes. So, they see this face on that book cover and it just sort of has a life of its own because people see my face and they go, what is she talking about? I bet you she knows something no one else is talking about. And the reality is that's the truth. When you don't come from wealth, but you want to build it, you have to come up with different methods that are actually correspond to 80% of the country, not the 20% who already had it going in.
Yeah. For if anyone was wanting to get in a call with you, what is that going to cost?
For the initial $45 at this moment. So for a 30-minute strategy session conversation.
All right, morning enthusiasts, you have heard it here. This is Lisa Phillips, and we are going into her morning routine, but she is she is the truth. Lisa, tell us, how do you get up, dress up, and show up in your life to do what you do?
Oh, well, I'm all about lifestyle choices and living the life you want, right? You, not someone else. So generally, I set my calendar and my day to begin a little later in the afternoon at 12. So that means I have all up until 12 to do what I like. And that was the choice I made. So I'm not an early morning riser, but you don't necessarily need to be if that's your lifestyle. And I get up, I listen to some I do some spiritual healing. I'm a spiritual healer, so I'll do an energetic healing on myself in the morning to clear out my chakra, clear up any sinuses problems I might have, any pain, anything like that. do some heart chakra and some crown chakra meditations to open that up. And then I get dressed while listening to some like Tibetan singing bells. It's really spiritual over here, like, because it soothes me and it brings around this very peaceful environment and calm setting. I try to drink a glass of lemon water in the morning. I was guided that that's something to do for your health, and then eat like a healthy breakfast. And then after that, I will work on my manifestations, either vision boards, lighting a candle for what I want, creating a crystal grid, just some sort of magic or manifestation that I want to create in my life. And then after that, I start with my client calls. So I was very intentional about that. And during the summer, I will be incorporating going to the beach and getting a beach walk-in and a beach meditation. So that's the life. And it's not everyone's life, right? But it's the life I chose because I've never been an early morning riser. So I formatted my life to match me versus me trying to match everyone else.
Yeah. And that's the beauty with morning routines, because it has to fit your schedule. It has to fit your personality. Otherwise, you won't stick to it. It won't work for you.
Everything in life, it has to be good for you, or else you're not going to stick to it, or you're not going to like it, or it causes you stress.
Yeah, just like choosing where to invest and how to invest. You have to do that CrossFit analysis. Mm-hmm. To see what works. You are multifaceted because you're an electrical engineer who is an energy healer and a God believer. How does that work?
I do. It's so funny. It's the engineering part. Sometimes I'm like, I'm into energy healing, and I wonder if at some level I did the electrical engineering low key because I wanted to understand energy. But I got into that just recently since when I started my real estate investing, and my passive income coming, I had more time to focus on the spirituality aspect, trying to go deeper, meditating, going into meditation, asking what my purpose is, what guidance do I have today? What do I need to do? Learning that I am actually a healer and that I have that ability. That was all along a part of my gift and my purpose. Learning that this real estate investing and putting it out to the world was part of my gift and purpose. I was called to do that, and I followed the cues. But when you're following the cues and you're doing you're going to be guided to what you're here to do. So me making this real estate investing platform and spreading this knowledge was part of my path. And this next path is to continue that, but also to spread the fact that we are healers and we are creators and we can manifest our life, just and how to shift our energy into doing that. And yes, I talk about God and Jesus and angels. In addition to like creating a crystal grid or lighting a candle, like, girl, there's no reason it all can't be done. I'm just comfortable talking about it because to me, there's no disconnect. There isn't to me. To other people, I find that sometimes when you get into the candles and crystal grids, people get a little, hey, that's not in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely know there's two camps. There are people who are religious and closed-minded and people who are religious and not closed-minded. I generally get along with the ones who are religious but not closed, that there are other things out there in addition to, because I look at the Bible and those stories, I'm like, facts, right? I don't see anything different there than what I learned through my own spiritual resources, through my own meditations, through my own guidance. It's fact. That doesn't mean it's it. It just means that's fact, but there's other facts as well. Mm-hmm. So if there are people who are really religious and they're like, it can't be anything outside of Jesus, I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to discuss this with you because that's your stance. But then I love having conversations with people who are deeply religious. But when we talk, we have the same exact conversation. We just use different words. They say prayer. I say setting an intention, right? They ask for guidance from Jesus. I ask from Jesus and my angels and my spirit guides and ancestors. We both talk about that we've given our faith to the higher power above us and our higher selves, and that we are here for a bigger purpose, mm-hmm. and that we walk every day trying to deepen our faith in what we cannot see, even though we know behind the scenes it's working. Right. So I love when I can find an open-minded person who's very religious, because it's so lovely how we're on the same exact path. And when they're open to that discussion and they don't get freaked out or scared by the idea of like maybe what they might consider the esoteric, which is honestly, it's just a different, what is it called? Liturgy, or like, I just got a book called The Magic in Catholicism, right? And so that one's literally, it's in my Kindle. I just purchased it last night. And so it's really interesting on reading up how you're using magic. You just don't call it magic. You call it liturgy, or you call it other things, but when we burn those candles in church, right? When you burn it in the Buddhist temple, it's the same as me doing it on my bookcase, right? But I incorporate feng shui. So if it's like, I want to be a New York Times bestselling author, I burnt a candle to that. I did it in the south corner of my house, which for me in feng shui corresponds to the feng. So I just introduced not only like the religious aspect, but the earth energy of feng shui. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. You know what I mean? Like I incorporate earth energy and other energies into it. And for some people, it's like, if it's not in the Bible, it doesn't exist. But hey, that's your choice. I'm me. I am very comfortable with how I'm manifesting, what I'm manifesting. I live my life the way I want to live it. And part of that is because I accept all help from all resources.
You are intentional about your every move. And you're right. It's about the power, the source. It is about the one being that we know is out there, is, guiding us, that infinite intelligence, that God power that is infinite. Beyond us. It's infinite.
Because sometimes I'm like, wow. Oh, y'all good. I'm like, brilliant. Because sometimes if you know that they're working on your behalf, you can look back at a situation you wanted to manifest and it did. And you're like, that was brilliant. Oh my, it's like, and it's times like that for me personally that I'm like, oh my God, the infinite intelligence, bringing all these different factors into alignment so that this could take place for the prayers to be answered. It's amazing.
I agree with you 100%. I'm on the same path as you are. I meditate. They say you meditate. Prayer is when we're talking to God. Meditation is God talking to us. We really gotta quiet our soul down, quiet our mind down to hear from God for direction, because we are abundance. We are infinite ourselves. We are perfect, just as He is perfect, or God is perfect. The Spirit is perfect, but we don't understand that. We don't grasp that because of negativity or being told we don't amount to much. So we got to reclaim that. We do have to speak that into existence. And I am with you 100%. I do believe in the, meditation and manifestation, visualization, energy healing. We are a bundle of energy. We are made of energy.
We are.
So if we negate that fact alone, we are in trouble.
Oh my gosh. Everything comes down to comes down to the chakras. Everything does. Once you get to that level, you start understanding when my chakras are clear, I'm clear. That's it. Just is what it is. When I meditate, I'm good. How many benefits are there to meditations? Because I'm very analytical. So I went up to the National Institute of Health where they have all those studies on meditation. I mean, back pain, this, addiction, da-da-da-da. You just go down the line. Any ailment, basically meditation has shown in provable scientific method with metrics has fixed or solved an issue or ameliorated it. And all of this spirituality stuff started with my meditation, because I meditated and all of a sudden I'm getting this energy flow in my body and I start to rock or move. And I'm like, what's that? And I'd look it up. I would see flashes of blue, red, purple behind my eyelids during meditation. So I look it up. What is that? And all of that started because I took the time and for 3 minutes a day to start that. And that was what I was supposed to see, because I do have a purpose as a healer. That was my guidance. And so every day I try to quiet the mind and ask, okay, what do we need to do today? What am I here for? So I know I want this goal. Is there anything else? And see what I hear. Or sometimes you don't hear it. I don't hear or see everything, but I'm guided to do things. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, right? So because I walk by faith, not by sight, I notice when I'm called to do something from that guidance I requested that day. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm in a situation I wouldn't be in it. And I'm like, oh, I was guided to this because this ordinarily I would not be in this situation or I wouldn't be doing this. But I pay attention to those cues.
You've been ordained. You got to listen to that voice because the subconscious mind is working for you in your benefit 24/7. We don't know that. Yeah. Lisa, I love what you brought to the show today. I thank you for your insight. I didn't even give you a proper introduction. You just jumped right in. And we did the damn thing. I thank you for who you are and for sharing so much insight. Okay, have a good one.
Bye.
All right, morning enthusiasts, that's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you love the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or Google Play. While you're at it, tell a friend about the show. Be sure to visit bestmorningroutineever.com and our Facebook group to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic free bonus content. Until next time,